you go back to last year to now, wallets with 10 to 10,000 BTC, which hold about 2/3 of all of the supply, they've added about 536,320 more Bitcoin. That's a ton.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. Joining me today is Brian from Sentiment, and we are going to do a deep dive into the crypto metrics for Bitcoin, various altcoins, and much more to get a pulse on what's happening in this market. Brian, great to see you.
Good to see you, Tony. Huge week for crypto. Altcoins, especially top caps like Ethereum and Chainlink, are just going off right now. So that's got the crowd excited, as you would expect. And we can get into a lot of metrics today.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into this because, I don't recall if Bitcoin hit a new all-time high after we spoke the last time. It hit 123K, but then rotational liquidity, ETH has been rallying, crossing 4,000. So let's kick it off with Bitcoin. What are you seeing there from a sentiment standpoint?
So we'll start off with Bitcoin sentiment. So for those who've been watching, you're well familiar. For those who haven't been watching until this episode, this gold line here tells us almost everything we need to know about the sentiment of a coin. It's basically taking the ratio of all those bullish comments, people saying it's going to the moon, people saying Bitcoin's going to 200K, and we're dividing that by people saying Bitcoin's going to die, sell while you can, buy back in at 10K, stuff like that, right? So this gold line, when it gets up here, that's full of a bunch of people calling for very high levels. When it gets down here, that's people expecting prices to continue to go down. And as you can tell, there's often a good inverse reaction to the extremes. So the highest greed line on this chart was on May 22nd, right when Bitcoin topped and started to go down. The lowest was on June 22nd when we bottomed and proceeded to go on a scorching run over the next 3 weeks or so. So where are we now? We're kind of right in the middle. We've got the ratio between bullish and bearish comments across social media at about 1.3 to 1. That's pretty normal for Bitcoin. There's always going to be a little bit of a bullish skew. So we call that roughly normal, right? This is, of course, an eyeballed line, but more or less right about here is the average, and we're just about there.
Interesting. So this is certainly good, better than everyone calling for it to be bullish, because as we've often talked about, the markets do the opposite of the herd. And if people are kind of, I don't know what's going to happen with Bitcoin next, or they're in fear, those are the two best positions we would want.
Precisely. Yeah, we want to go against the crowd because the crowd is not representative of the big whales. They're representative of the small people who are trailing all of the big rallies or all of the big drops that are happening and reacting to them emotionally and in hindsight, and basically buying the bags after the prices have already gone way up, or selling the bags after they just dropped 20, 30, 40%, as we've seen plenty of times over the course of Bitcoin's 17-ish year history here. Of course, Bitcoin is trailing compared to most altcoins right now. Bitcoin's been basically the anchor that's allowing all of the profit redistributions of the past couple of months to trickle into Ethereum, Solana, XRP, Chainlink, some of these big top caps. I know Solana is actually trailing a little behind the others, but Bitcoin in general is staying put. So it's not surprising to see that it's not doing too much. But if we switch to Ethereum here, it's interesting to see that we're actually not getting a ton of bullish sentiment, because Ethereum is just about at that $4,500 level now. And I see that there's a little bit of a rise, but people are just not believing it at all. It's pure denial from the crowd. So what I'm interested in is at what point is the crowd going to finally say, you know what? I need to get in on Ethereum. I don't think the rally is going to stop. And once the crowd, the retail, the majority of small traders who have, $30 or a couple $100 in Ethereum, they decide they want to jump back in. That's when we're going to see the whales sell their bags with ease and drop the price finally. But for now, the coast looks pretty clear from a sentiment perspective, which is quite fascinating after a rally that started just about 10 days ago. And we've seen the price go up about 32% in those 10 days.
That's interesting. I wonder, maybe it's more time, maybe it's higher prices that they need to see. Maybe they need to see the all-time highs broken, which is around like 4,800 if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Um
we're getting close.
yeah, so maybe that would be the trigger, because they've Ethereum has faked this out so many times. It's tested that $4,000 wall like 3-4 times over the past year and hasn't been able to break it. And even though it broke it now, uh it's still, I think maybe the crowd is still not enthused. They're not like, let's see what happens. It might crash back down. But if it grows and breaks the all-time high, then it's like, oh, this time's for real.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's how I see it too. It's a psychological game, and even breaking highs that we haven't seen since what was the year? It's funny. Crypto fluctuates so much over time that it's easy to lose track of. Oh, when's the last time it hit this price? There we go. Yeah. So it was basically the end of 2024. And I barely remember this because it was such a short-term visit above 4K. And then we dropped back down. This was kind of the post-Trump celebration when everyone decided that Trump was going to pump all the market caps up to millions and millions of dollars. And that didn't happen, or at least it didn't right away. We saw a big letdown after he was inaugurated, and then it recovered basically. So we've seen basically 4 jumps above 4K, and each of those other 3 times it did quick nosedives back down. So perhaps there's a lot of people, and this is trailing by a week, by the way. That's why it looks below 4K still, because we're way zoomed out. But perhaps I think a lot of the retail traders are so jaded by these past 3 teases that they're just refusing to buy into the hype.
Yeah, I think it has to break the all-time high, and then I think then some FOMO is going to start. Can we look at the Bitcoin MVRV? I'm curious what that looks like.
All right. So MVRV, as you've mentioned, Tony, it's the average returns of the past 30 days or the past 365 days. So the reason this matters is because crypto is a zero-sum game. We want to be buying in when others are in pain or struggling. And we've all heard buy low, sell high many times, but MVRV actually gives us a roadmap as to what the low and the high is, because it's not just looking in the past and saying, $2,000 Bitcoin is low and $200,000 is high. We need to understand, during the context of all of the short-term traders and the long-term traders, which ones are, or when we put them all together, are they way underwater or way above water? And many of you who've watched have already kind of understood that concept, but it's super important to drill down. And from what I'm seeing now, 30-day average returns are just at about plus 1.7%. 365 days, way up at about plus 22, which is a little concerning. I would like to see both mainly stay under plus 10% as a clear path for any coin to continue thriving. When it's well above that for at least one, like we see now, it's kind of like a proceed with caution signal. At the very least, though, we can say that the short term is just sitting around even. So if you're hoping for a quick 2, 3, 4-day run, that could very well happen without much resistance, because there's not a lot of profit that's been happening from a short-term perspective.
That makes sense. And I'm curious, Bitcoin over the weekend, it tried to maybe go test that high again at 123. It topped out just below 122. Maybe there's some room for upside in the short term, but to your point, I don't know, maybe we could see a bigger pullback before another major move.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some event at some point that makes this long-term trend of profits start to diminish back down to zero at some point. We saw it back here in November. This was a couple of weeks after the Trump hype, after he was first elected. We end up going on a drop. And then once we see both of these lines below zero, we just go on this crazy rally. So we're not in like a crazy danger zone, because here we see both lines way above zero. Here it's only one, while this one's normal. So not as scary, but we could at least see a little bit of flattening, so that the the time allows the long-term returns to start to settle back down and reset.
Got it. What are the whales doing? Are they accumulating? Are they taking profits?
Yeah, great question. So the last I checked, we saw pretty steady accumulation, and that appears to still be the case. So from a long-term perspective, if you go back to last year to now, wallets with 10 to 10,000 BTC, which hold about 2/3 of all of the supply, they've added about 536,320 more Bitcoin. That's a ton, 4.1% more compared to what they had a year ago. So they certainly believe, and you can see how their accumulation trends with the price. And oftentimes it's a leading indicator where they'll start dumping and you have a few days or even a week or two to react. So once they started accumulating again here in mid-March, about 5 months ago, we just started to blast off in terms of price with these big green candles. As of now, they're still a little below where they were in mid-July. So about 4 weeks have passed and they've actually dumped just about 30K Bitcoin. But I'm not too worried because this long-term trend looks fine to me. This latest day, they've added a little bit back, a little over 10,000 BTC. So they're kind of just doing business as usual, letting altcoins rally right now. And I would assume eventually many of the whales who are in altcoins themselves decide, all right, it's time for the altcoin rally to stop. We're going to put it back in Bitcoin. And you'll see that bright green line here jump again.
Yeah, especially as Bitcoin just hit about a month ago or weeks ago, 123K new all-time high. You expect there to be some profit taking, but as to your point, when you zoom out, the overall trend is still up. There's no clear downtrend here.
Yeah, I mean, unless we start to see something really concerning, like this drop here over the span of 2-3 weeks or so, 57, 58K Bitcoin. That's the kind of stuff that we would be really worried about. But staying flat for a bit or kind of going into neutral like they are now, not really too big of a deal.
Yeah. What about ETF inflows? Those sometimes mirror this data, but I know, there's going to be ETFs are kind of these living entities and they have their outflow moments. But overall, I think the trend has been inflows significantly outweigh the outflows.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been kind of a tale of a couple weeks here. At the turn of the month from July to August, we suddenly saw these drops, big drops actually. This was the biggest outflow day we had seen at least since we have the data starting back in September of last year. So call it about a 1-year high, if not the biggest outflow day we've seen. And you can see how prices dropped along with that. And it does kind of match what we saw on the on-chain side of things we just looked at with the bright green line. So yeah, they had 4 straight days of pretty big outflows. So that was looking dicey. But all of a sudden, about a week ago, they started to pour money back in as usual. And we could see how price quickly reacted to that.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think anytime we hit some major all-time high point, like we did with 123, there's going to be some profit taken. That is normal. That's healthy. People, I mean, I don't know if you had seen the news. One whale, a Satoshi era whale, took profits about a month ago. I think $9 billion. And it's like, we don't know who the person is, but they took profits and it makes sense. I mean, if I had that much Bitcoin and Bitcoin hit a new all-time high and I needed the money right away, I do what I got to do.
Yeah, insane numbers. I mean, I think that's the kind of stuff that makes headlines, but in a weird way, it's like an isolated incident. I don't think it's reflective of like dozens or hundreds of key stakeholders kind of taking profit at once. And for all we know, I'm sure the report did its due diligence, but you never know if the whale is just transferring money. Even if it did move stuff to exchanges. What if they're part of the exchange? What if they have some sort of back-end deal going on? You never really know with these things, but I generally just care about like the overall trend of whales right here, or even the ETFs that we're just looking at.
Absolutely. I know we looked at the sentiment for Ethereum. Can we look at the MVRV for Ethereum?
Yeah, good call, considering how in the news Ethereum has been as of late. So it's obviously been on a scorching run. I'd expect very high profits. We'll see how this. Okay.
Yeah.
So, like on the short term, anything above plus 15% gets scary. That's just our rule of thumb. There's exceptions where prices can still climb up a little bit more after it crosses, like it has now. It's at about plus 18%. I would say this is even more concerning, though. The average returns of Ethereum traders that have been active in the past year are at plus 56, and we have not seen that high of a number in years, I want to say. Maybe in the late 20, no, it's way surpassed the 2024 rally. So let's say we just go back to 2020 for a minute. And I've got to actually, because we looked at intraday, I've got to switch to a more broad MVRV. Bear with me. Long-term wise, yeah. So in early 2024, when we had that big top, I remember Bitcoin hits 74K or something like that, something around that for the then all-time high. And it carried many altcoins up with it. Ethereum's MVRV got all the way up to plus 83% before it just started to pummel, tease a little bit, pummel again, and then one more tease followed by this huge drop, ending with the tariff stuff kind of bringing in massive fears. But right now it's up high. And the point is, you don't really want to see MVRVs anywhere near like plus 50% or above. And this would concern me from like a math perspective. If you are buying in now, knowing that the average traders that you're competing against are already up 55-ish%, you're doing so at a bigger risk than usual. Doesn't mean prices can't trickle up. We've seen times where it just went scorching despite the high MVRVs for a little bit longer, but there will be a point in which these average trader profits get punished.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I wonder if ETH is going to break its all-time high, then have that kind of correction that's needed, a healthy correction, which would be in line with some of these data points. Maybe that's the thing, right? Going back to our theme earlier of retail is not really excited about this move yet. I guess they're waiting for the all-time high to break.
Yeah. I mean, Ethereum's existed publicly for trading a little over 10 years now. Just had its 10th birthday a couple of weeks ago, actually. And it's still as sentiment driven as ever. And when you see psychological supports or resistances get broken, like 4K, like it did a couple days ago, or breaks the potential all-time high in the next week or so, which many are hoping for, that can be the sign where it suddenly makes headlines and you see it on, you know, television and Jim Cramer talking about it and telling everyone it's time to buy. And people who trust Jim Cramer, you know, I don't know why they still would, because he's like memed to oblivion as being a counter signal these days. But people who want to follow his advice, they can very well just create the top and we see a big drop. But of course, it all goes back to Bitcoin a little bit. And if Bitcoin stays afloat and keeps climbing itself, the damage will be limited for Ethereum and every other altcoin under the sun.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's look at XRP, similar metrics, sentiment, and MVRV as well.
XRP, we can probably zoom in a little bit. So it had extreme MVRV. Like XRP goes on such monumental runs followed by big collapses, much more so than Bitcoin and Ethereum. But this latest one is definitely generating some hype. We'll just zoom into the last 6 months here. So MVRV is not quite as scary as Ethereum, but it's close. Plus 42% is still quite high. This is telling me that you should proceed with caution, not because XRP isn't a great long-term investment. I have no opinions of that. I don't own crypto, but is in terms of short-term volatility, be a little careful when you see a number this high.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And maybe, I don't know, maybe XRP is going to bleed a bit before it rallies again, so that these metrics and data points are in alignment to what we're talking about. So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Exactly. Now we have Solana and SWI sentiment, if you want to dig into that really quick, Tony. We'll start with XRP sentiment. Okay. All right, so XRP's kind of been all over the place. It looks like it did have a big euphoric day yesterday. We're recording on August 12th, but it's come back to earth so far today. So this is showing a little over 2.1 bullish comments for every bearish comment. That means people are getting a little greedy, probably reacting to this jump back up to like 325-ish. And then it dropped back down. What's interesting is it topped even though sentiment was negative, and that was just because Bitcoin ended up correcting here and had their own all-time high that just brought everything down with it. But I don't see anything too extreme here. I think XRP's sentiment is pretty normal, so not much else to say about it.
Well, let's look at Solana, and then we can look at SWI as well.
Solana, again, is just kind of staying in neutral. I know it's gone on a bit of a rally, but it's been overshadowed by Ethereum and even Chainlink being one that's just surging right now. And there's a few meme coins out there. So Solana itself, even though it's got many meme coins that are doing very well right now, it's kind of sitting with very neutral sentiment based on its history. It has these weird spikes that are almost like they get more positive when Solana goes down, which is strange. I think it just has to do with bot activity, but right now there's just not much going on here.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Ethereum has been stealing the show, and you haven't really heard much about Solana lately. But every dog has its day in this market. Eventually, ETH will cool down, then Solana is going to rip, and same thing with XRP and the others.
Yeah, and there's an argument that Solana is a bit overshadowed right now because it is on a plus 16.5% run in the last 10 days. And that's not that significant compared to many out there, but it's moving in the right direction without getting much hype. And that can sometimes be a good combination.
Oh, for sure. What about SWI? That's been in the news lately with treasury companies and much more.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's what these huge positive spikes were about a week and change ago. Big positive spikes as the price was bottoming a couple times. So I think this might have just been news driven, and maybe there were some sell-offs where people weren't sure what to make of the news, but the bullish sentiment around here was undeniable. And it did go on a bit of a bounce followed by a drop, and it's sitting a little below $4 once again. But I'm intrigued by the big positive spikes that were kind of the biggest of the year, especially this one here, followed by kind of more neutral, slightly positive sentiment going on right here. What could you tell me a little bit about the treasury news? Because I haven't been following SWI as much as you.
Yeah, there's been a couple of publicly traded companies who decide to go the crypto treasury route, and they're using SWI. And there have been multiple news announcements. I think one just from yesterday I covered on the news podcast of they're buying like $20 million more SWI. And then Grayscale, they added support for 2 chains that are built on SWI. So there's been some like adoption news, things that are making headlines. So I think these spikes are definitely headline driven.
Yeah, they must be. I mean, you don't usually see these big euphoric spikes as a price is plummeting. So it had to have been related to what you're referring to there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's probably a good summary in terms of where we're at in the markets. I think we're on a heater right now, and many people know we're on a heater. Crypto's getting more national headlines than they usually do. Anytime we see a run like this, that's pretty much the status quo. But I'll be interested to see, especially Ethereum right now, which is driving kind of the biggest mainstream reports. If it breaks that 4,800 all-time high, how quickly are people going to try to jump on the bandwagon? Because if they do it fast, that's when we plummet quickly. And as pro crypto people, we hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping, Brian, we get another major rally this month. Maybe things bottom out before we go. But ETH has been kind of leading the charge, and what we've seen historically is altcoins. The altcoin market generally follows ETH. So let's see what happens. Maybe things get really overheated, and then they go to a local top this month, cool down in September, then another major rally come early Q4. I don't know, but we'll see. But
yeah, that's viable for sure.
Yeah, we're hoping for higher prices, man.
Fingers crossed.
Good stuff, Brian. Thank you, and looking forward to our next chat.
Thanks, Tony. Really appreciate it, man.